Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are looking at a honestly massive stack of source materials.
Oh, yeah, we really are. It's a lot of dense stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we've got technical white papers, proprietary system documentation, architectural case studies, luxury real estate market analyses.
And it is all centered on one singular disruption in the ultra high-end residential development space.
Right. We are examining a platform called N4S, or Not4Sale.
Which is such a fascinating name for it.
It really is. But to give you some immediate context here, I want you to imagine you are commissioning a custom residential project.
Yeah.
We are talking in the $5 million to $100 million plus range.
Yeah, at that tier of the market, you are not just buying a house.
No, not at all.
You are initiating this highly volatile, deeply personal, and enormously complex multi-year commission.
Exactly. You're functioning more like a commercial developer at that point.
Right, except the asset is inextricably linked to your own private lifestyle.
Which is where things get messy, because the documentation we're reviewing makes a pretty compelling case that the traditional process for executing these commissions is, well, it's fundamentally broken.
Completely broken. And the sources argue it's because it's entirely unscientific.
Yes.
Historically, the luxury residential development world has operated on instinct.
Just gut feelings and relationship networks.
Informal heuristics. The sources illustrate this so vividly. You have a client whose entire operational lifestyle and aesthetic identity are supposedly captured through
Like a casual conversation over coffee.
exactly an unstructured chat.
Right, and then sites are evaluated based on a visual drive-by. Or just a broker's narrative.
Oh, and project costs are modeled using those abstract dollars per square foot multipliers.
Which is wild, because that completely ignores structural complexities or site-specific topographical challenges.
Right, it's just a flat guess, basically.
Well,
And perhaps most critically, the execution teams. So the architects, the general contractors, the interior designers.
they're all assembled through referral networks.
Yes. Which means the friction of their varying communication styles or conflict resolution methods, their design vernaculars,
All of that is discovered on the job.
on the job.
Mm.
Well after the multi-million-dollar contracts are already executed.
It's essentially a multi-million-dollar blind date. And the fallout from that instinct-driven model is mapped out extensively in these market analyses.
It's not pretty.
No, when you replace structured data with assumptions, the project inevitably suffers from massive budget surprises.
Relentless scope creep.
Yeah, and intense team friction. Because you get an architect who is accustomed to a fluid exploratory process.
And suddenly they're paired with a general contractor who requires rigid, linear decision-making.
It's a recipe for endless design rework. And ultimately, you produce properties that fail to achieve their potential on the resale market.
Because the critical alignment decisions regarding the dominant buyer archetypes were just never made.
Right. So the mission of our analysis today is to really unpack how this N4S platform replaces all that guesswork with a connected, data-driven workflow.
A workflow where every single decision in the pre-construction phase is documented
Validated.
and mathematically carried forward.
So let's get into how it actually does that. The foundational architecture of N4S is built on a principle they call progressive disclosure.
Right. Which means the platform doesn't just overwhelm you or your advisor with a massive monolithic dashboard of variables on day one.
Because that would be terrifying.
Exactly. Instead, it surfaces specific analytical tools precisely when they are required in the workflow.
And throughout this pre-construction journey, the system algorithmically anchors every phase to 4 operational questions.
Goal.
Right, what is the specific objective of this module? How are we getting the data?
Status.
Where does the project currently stand?
And next steps. What is the immediate actionable requirement right now?
So let's apply that framework to the very beginning of the client journey. N4S calls this Stage 1 discovery.
Which focuses entirely on defining the client and defining the spatial parameters.
Right. It starts with Module 1, KYC, or Know Your Client.
Now, the white papers detail that this is not your standard rudimentary intake form.
Definitely not. It's a 9-section structured exploration designed to quantify your life, your household composition, your operational mechanics.
Even your portfolio context. The objective is to extract data that you often just cannot accurately articulate through a normal conversation.
Yeah, because people don't know what they don't know, or they don't know how to describe it.
Right. And the taste exploration feature within this KYC module is a prime example of that methodology.
I found this part fascinating.
It really is. It bypasses the limitations of verbal aesthetic descriptions. Because think about it. One person's definition of contemporary might mean stark, cold minimalism.
Yeah, and their partner's definition might mean warm transitional modernism.
Exactly. So the system forces you to process visual data instead. You rate 110 distinct image quads.
110.
Yes, and these are carefully calibrated sets of visual stimuli that measure your underlying preferences.
So it's not just do you like this couch?
No, it's measuring spatial complexity, textural warmth, geometric formality, color boldness. The algorithm processes all these ratings to generate a quantified design identity on a strict 0 to 10 scale.
Which brings us to the feature the system documentation calls dual principal support, which seems specifically engineered to save marriages.
Honestly, it probably does.
Because it mitigates early stage risk. If two partners are commissioning a project, traditional methods often allow their divergent tastes to remain totally hidden.
Until the architect presents the schematic designs months later.
Right. And then you have an expensive redesign and a massive fight.
N4S completely preempts that. It requires both principals to execute that 110 image quad taste exploration entirely independently.
No looking over each other's shoulders.
Exactly. And then the system's backend maps their results against each other. It highlights the exact points of convergence and divergence.
So it surfaces the design conflicts on day one.
Yes. You are replacing a subjective, emotionally charged argument halfway through the design phase.
With objective structured data before a single line is drawn.
And once that alignment is finally achieved between the partners, the KYC module executes what they call an intake lock.
Which is a critical mechanism.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because that captured data regarding lifestyle and taste and household operations becomes the immutable baseline.
It prevents scope drift.
Right. Every downstream decision, whether it's an architectural flourish or a material selection or a spatial addition, it is anchored to this locked profile.
The system is just constantly checking subsequent choices against this initial truth, just to ensure the project remains faithful to what you actually validated.
Which flows directly into Module 2.
Right. FYI, find your inspiration.
Which functions as the space program generator.
So now we're moving from the psychological profile into the mathematical footprint of the structure.
Yeah, the case studies show, FYI, completely replacing that traditional method of sketching a rough room list on a legal pad.
Yeah, like, we need a kitchen, we need 4 bedrooms.
Right. FYI is a curated space library that actually translates the locked KYC data into a buildable program.
It assigns specific rooms to defined functional zones, private, social, service, exterior, and it allocates them to specific structural levels.
And the real-time tracking capability here is what makes it a genuine structural tool rather than just a wish list.
Because as you populate the space program, the system is continuously tracking the aggregate square footage against your target parameters.
The ones you established back in the KYC module.
Exactly. So if you stipulated a target footprint of, say, 15,000 square feet, the FYI interface displays the real-time delta percentage.
So if you suddenly decide to add a secondary caterer's kitchen, or you want to expand the primary suite dressing room,
it immediately reflects an overage percentage. Boom, you're 5% over. Boom, you're 10% over.
the advisor and the client know instantly if the program is running way over the target footprint.
Which allows for immediate spatial rationalization long before an architect is engaged to draft anything.
The technical papers actually provide a really good scenario for how the KYC data dictates this FYI space program.
Let's hear it.
If the initial data capture reveals a household that routinely hosts formal catered events for 50 people.
Right, then the spatial organization has to accommodate that. Commercial-grade staging areas, distinct service circulation routes, high-capacity cloakrooms.
Exactly. Conversely, if you have a household that lives casually and entertains intimately, they need an entirely different spatial flow.
They prioritize open plan interaction, integrated family zones.
FYI ensures the spatial footprint reflects the actual operational lifestyle, not just some generic luxury template.
And it also incorporates multi-structure support.
Yes. So if your estate requires a primary residence, a detached guest house, an independent pool pavilion, a security gatehouse,
FYI builds a distinct space program for each one of those structures, tracking both the individual and the aggregate square footage to ensure you're compliant with the site.
now the transition from defining the space to actually proving its viability occurs in Section 2.
The documentation calls this the ultimate stress test.
Right. This is Module 3, MVP, the Mansion Validation Program.
This might be my favorite part, because this module functions as a system-enforced quality gate.
It is a graph-based spatial rules processor.
It interrogates the FYI space program to determine if the rooms you selected can actually function together, logically, acoustically, and operationally.
The algorithmic logic underpinning MVP is genuinely fascinating. The white papers describe a proprietary logic system evaluating every single spatial relationship.
It uses ANBS logic, right?
Yes, A stands for adjacent, meaning two spaces must share an immediate threshold, like a formal dining room and a butler's pantry.
They have to touch.
Exactly. N is near, indicating spaces that should occupy the same functional zone, but don't require direct connection.
B is buffered, demanding acoustic or circulation separation between spaces.
And S is separate, which is an absolute mandate that two spaces must not share walls, thresholds, or direct sight lines.
And the system cross-references hundreds of spatial pairs against this exact logic matrix.
And the acoustic zone classification is a huge component of that.
Right, MVP categorizes every space on a scale from zone 0 to zone 3.
Zone 0 represents spaces requiring absolute silence. Sleeping quarters, dedicated studies.
And zone 3 encompasses your high noise environments. Home theaters, indoor sport courts, mechanical rooms, wellness centers.
And the MVP algorithm enforces a strict prohibition against a Zone 3 space sharing a structural partition with a Zone 0 space.
They cannot share a floor or a ceiling assembly either.
Right. Because in traditional development, an architect might actually inadvertently place a high-output home theater directly beneath a guest suite.
Which you wouldn't even notice on paper.
An error that often goes completely unnoticed until the drywall is hung and the base is vibrating the floorboards.
MVP catches that instantly. The system also screens for what it defines as the 5 critical red flags.
These are non-negotiable failure states for any luxury floor plan.
For example, if your programmatic flow requires a refuse removal route or a bulk delivery path to intersect with front-of-house entertaining spaces,
the MVP algorithm immediately flags the configuration as a failure.
it just rejects it. Same thing if a guest circulation route from the foyer to the exterior dining terrace forces people to cross the primary kitchen work triangle.
It's a failure. And when a spatial configuration fails this stress test, the platform initiates what they call a fail-forward iteration loop.
Right, it doesn't just block your progress and say error.
No, it redirects the advisor and the client back into the FYI module and highlights the specific conflict nodes.
Like it points right to the acoustic clash between the gym and the study.
Exactly. You adjust the programmatic adjacencies, and the system automatically reevaluates the matrix.
And the financial implications of this module are just profound.
Because discovering that a guest suite compromises family privacy or that a service road is flawed, it costs absolutely nothing to fix while it exists as data.
It's just pixels on a screen. But identifying those exact same failures during the framing stage of construction involves catastrophic financial penalties.
Massive schedule delays.
And if the errors survive into the finished architecture, they permanently degrade the asset's utility and market value.
MVP just neutralizes those spatial failures at the point of origin.
So having validated the internal logic of the space program, the platform shifts to stage 2, strategy.
Right, which encompasses the market context and the physical site.
This is outlined in Module 4, KYM, Know Your Market, because the luxury residential sector is defined by this inherent tension.
The tension between executing a hyper-personalized, idiosyncratic dream home
And developing a liquid financial asset that actually retains its value.
KYM is engineered to quantify and manage that exact tension, and the core analytical engine driving this is BAM, the buyer alignment matrix.
BAM deploys a dual scoring framework. It evaluates every programmatic and design decision against 2 distinct parallel metrics.
The first metric is client satisfaction. To what degree does this specific feature serve the locked KYC profile of you, the current client?
And the second metric is market appeal. To what degree will this feature resonate with or alienate the future buyer pool in this specific geographic and economic market?
The market analyses in our sources provide a really clarifying hypothetical for this.
The tech executive in Northern California, right?
Yeah. So consider a technology executive building a primary residence in a prominent Northern California enclave.
Their personal preference captured in the KYC module might dictate a highly insular segmented floor plan.
Minimal exterior fenestration to maximize privacy. Maybe they have an extensive physical art collection they need wall space for.
But BAM evaluates this against the dominant buyer archetypes in that specific region.
Using 44 distinct feature flags across 10 defined buyer archetypes.
And if the dominant archetype in that market demands open plan, indoor, outdoor, collaborative living spaces with massive glazing,
BAM immediately flags the client's insular design as a high-risk liability for future resale.
it's just a brilliant reality check. And the sophistication of BAM lies in how it weighs these dual scores based on the portfolio context you established during discovery.
Right, because if you explicitly categorize the project as a multi-generational forever home, where legacy utility supersedes immediate liquidity.
The algorithm might weight the matrix 70% toward client satisfaction and 30% toward market appeal.
Your idiosyncratic vision is prioritized, but you are provided with empirical data detailing the exact market capitalization you are sacrificing for those personal choices.
You know exactly what it costs to be unique. Conversely, if the project is a speculative build or a transitional asset held for under 5 years, the weighting inverts to prioritize market appeal.
BAM transforms that abstract concept of resale value into a quantifiable data set.
Allowing you to make informed, calculated compromises between personal desire and market reality before architectural fees are expended.
And that external validation continues right into Module 5 of KYS. Know your site.
Because now you possess a mathematically validated space program and a calculated market strategy. But you have to determine if a specific parcel of land can physically and legally accommodate the vision.
KYS replaces the traditional intuitive site walk with a rigorous 31-factor site vision compatibility assessment.
31 factors.
Yeah, it evaluates candidate parcels across physical topography, regulatory encumbrances, infrastructure availability, environmental constraints.
And crucially, the system calibrates the assessment criteria to the specific site typology.
Right, because evaluating a coastal property involves entirely different baseline metrics than an alpine site.
For coastal, you're looking at tidal surge setbacks, corrosive atmospheric conditions, specialized foundation requirements.
Whereas an alpine site prioritizes snow load engineering, slope retention, and seasonal access logistics.
And the KYS module specifically screens against 10 non-negotiable deal-breaker conditions.
This is so important. A recurring scenario in the luxury sector involves a client acquiring an exceptional $10 million parcel of land,
Only to discover during the entitlement phase that local zoning ordinances strictly prohibit the multi-structure programmatic layout they need.
Right, they can't build the primary house, the detached guest quarters, and the equestrian facilities that their lifestyle mandates.
KYS forces the reconciliation of the FYI space program against the municipal data of the specific site before you buy it.
If a parcel fails any of the 10 deal-breaker conditions, like, say, the allowable lot coverage percentage cannot support your validated square footage.
The KYS assessment terminates immediately. It prevents you from sinking capital into exhaustive geotechnical surveys or legal due diligence on a property that fundamentally cannot support your locked vision.
Land acquisition represents a massive, highly illiquid capital deployment. It is the single variable most resistant to modification once executed.
You can't just return the dirt.
Exactly. KYS ensures that the physical reality of the Earth aligns seamlessly with the digital data of the validated program.
Once that alignment is confirmed, the N4S workflow advances to Section 4, Stage 3 execution.
This stage is dedicated to the allocation of capital and the deployment of human resources.
Module 6 is VMX, the visual matrix, which serves as the platform's parametric budget framework.
The documentation is highly critical of the industry standard dollars per square foot estimating model.
Right, they hate it.
And VMX is positioned as the direct antidote to it. A flat multiplier is essentially a blunt instrument.
It assumes a linear correlation between scale and cost, completely failing to account for the exponential cost curves introduced by architectural complexity.
Or material scarcity, or site constraints. VMX utilizes parametric cost modeling, where every single line item in the financial projection is directly traceable back to a specific spatial requirement generated in the FYI module.
And the defining interface of VMX is the heat map.
I love the heat map.
It's so cool. It visualizes the distribution of capital across 7 distinct construction categories, rendering the data as a color-coded intensity spectrum.
This interface exposes the direct financial consequence of every design decision.
So if you are reviewing early concepts and you request a dramatic 40-foot cantilevered architectural volume extending over a grade change,
The VMX heat map immediately registers a severe intensity spike in the structural engineering and steel fabrication categories.
it lights up red, visually demonstrating that accommodating that cantilever will consume a disproportionate percentage of the capital stack.
Consequently, starving the budget available for premium interior finishes or advanced home automation later on.
VMX also enforces a strict delineation between hard construction costs and soft costs.
Like architectural fees, municipal permitting, expediting, insurance premiums.
Right. Providing you with a comprehensive total project investment figure rather than just a construction estimate.
Furthermore, VMX allows for side-by-side dual scenario modeling.
This is where it gets really powerful. The advisor can present Scenario A, featuring the cantilevered volume and standard interior finishes alongside Scenario B.
Scenario B featuring conventional structural framing, but highly bespoke artisanal interior materials,
It transforms the dreaded process of value engineering.
which traditionally occurs in a state of panic after bids return 50% over budget.
Right into a proactive analytical tool deployed during the conceptual phase. You decide where to put the money before you spend it.
While VMX optimizes the capital, Module 7 BYT, or Build Your Team, optimizes the human capital.
The white papers emphasize that BYT is actually the most complex algorithmic module within the entire N4S ecosystem.
Because the assembly of the core triad, the architect, the interior designer, and the general contractor, has historically relied on the survivorship bias of referral networks.
Right, an advisor might recommend an architect simply because they successfully completed a project together 3 years ago.
Entirely ignoring whether that architect possesses the specific vernacular, operational scale, or organizational infrastructure required for your current unique commission.
BYT eliminates that risk through AI-powered candidate discovery running against a vast database of vetted professionals.
It filters candidates based on the project's geographic location, financial scale, and the precise aesthetic data captured during your KYC taste exploration.
And once a shortlist is generated, the system deploys a 2x10 dimension scoring matrix.
7 of these dimensions are strictly quantitative.
The system evaluates the candidate's financial resilience, geographic alignment with the site, their historical accuracy regarding budget adherence, their insurance liability caps.
The remaining 3 dimensions are qualitative, assessing design philosophy alignment, collaboration maturity, and execution vernacular.
But the true innovation within BYT is what they call the synergy sandbox.
Yes, identifying 3 highly competent professionals is insufficient. The platform has to predict how those specific individuals will interact under extreme pressure.
Before any contracts are drafted, the Synergy Sandbox analyzes the proposed team's chemistry across 6 operational dimensions.
Communication cadence, conflict resolution style, decision-making pace, meeting format preferences, technology interoperability, and feature coverage.
The concept of quantifying conflict resolution style is just remarkable.
It's so smart. The algorithm might identify that the proposed architect utilizes an asynchronous, highly documented and methodical approach to resolving design clashes,
While the proposed general contractor prefers immediate verbal on-site confrontation to drive rapid solutions.
the Synergy Sandbox flags this as a critical conflict node.
Pairing a brilliant methodical architect with an aggressive rapid-fire contractor guarantees a toxic site environment.
Which always leads to withheld information, schedule delays, and compromised quality.
The sandbox allows the advisor to simulate various team configurations, analyzing the cascading effects of swapping one contractor for another whose communication cadence aligns perfectly with the architect's.
It identifies complementary signals where the team's combined strengths mitigate individual weaknesses.
By replacing the traditional blind date of team assembly with quantified documented operational chemistry, BYT ensures the professionals executing the project are structurally aligned before they ever set foot on the site.
Managing the density of data generated by all 7 of these modules over an engagement that can span from 4 to 10 months requires a robust architectural framework of its own.
Which brings us to Section 5, the connective tissue and the experience layer.
The primary mechanism for preventing operational fatigue and maintaining momentum is the timeline and pace models.
The timeline is an embedded, automated project management system that tracks over 45 specific milestones throughout the pre-construction phase.
And it does not force you into a rigid, arbitrary schedule. Rather, it adapts to your operational rhythm using 3 distinct pace models.
The algorithm analyzes the velocity at which you complete the initial KYC modules and automatically assigns the appropriate model.
The focus model is a highly expedited 4-month sprint, designed for clients who process data rapidly, make immediate decisions, and demand aggressive forward momentum.
The fluid model represents the standard comprehensive 7-month engagement, allowing for deeper exploration and measured deliberation.
And the flexible model extends the timeline to 10 months, accommodating highly complex multi-structure estates or clients whose primary business obligations severely limit their availability.
And to ensure the locked vision established in KYC hasn't degraded or shifted over these extended timelines, the system mandates three formal checkpoints.
C1, C2, and C3.
These are not mere status updates.
No, they are structured psychological re-engagement protocols.
They force the entire team to pause, review the immutable baseline data, and confirm that the evolving architectural schematics and financial models remain perfectly aligned with your original intent.
The interface through which you interact with this vast intelligence network constitutes the experience layer, which is defined by two primary components.
Parker and the LuxeBrief portal.
The documentation is extremely explicit that Parker must not be conflated with a standard customer service chatbot.
Absolutely not. Parker is a deeply integrated proprietary AI engine that actively monitors over 149 live data fields across every module we have discussed.
From the acoustic zoning rules in MVP to the structural heat map data in VMX.
Parker operates with a dual persona. For the professional advisor, Parker functions as a high-level co-pilot.
It continuously analyzes the data architecture, spotting micro-inconsistencies.
Like an interior designer specifying a material that violates a local fire code identified in the KYS site assessment.
And it alerts the advisor before the error propagates.
But for you, the client, Parker functions as a guardian.
It resides within the LuxeBrief client portal as an always-on protective concierge.
If you experience sudden anxiety at midnight regarding whether the primary suite dimensions will accommodate your existing bespoke furniture,
Parker accesses the live FYI space program and provides an immediate fact-based confirmation.
it answers the anxiety with precision, shielding you from the overwhelming complexity of the raw data.
The LuxeBrief portal itself is designed around the principle of curated transparency.
It operates on phase-appropriate visibility. A client who is still navigating the early stages of spatial programming does not need and should not see the hyper-complex granular cost modeling of the VMX heat map.
LuxeBrief ensures you are only presented with the exact data required to execute the immediate decisions for that specific phase, eliminating decision paralysis.
A critical function of LuxeBrief is its rigid separation of record documents and live documents.
Record documents are immutable, time-stamped cryptographic snapshots of major decisions.
The KYC taste exploration results and the finalized FYI space program become record documents. They are locked and archived.
This structure permanently eliminates the phenomenon of revisionist history.
Those catastrophic moments where a client claims, I thought we agreed on a minimalist aesthetic 6 months into a traditional design process.
Exactly. Live documents, conversely, such as the VMX financial model or the project timeline, represent the fluid operational status of the project at that exact second.
LuxeBrief also manages the formal milestone sign-offs. When the system requires you to digitally execute an approval on the validated MVP space program, it acts as a structured psychological anchor of commitment.
It crystallizes months of fluid exploratory conversations into a concrete, undeniable foundation that the architectural and construction teams can rely upon with absolute certainty.
Synthesizing the entirety of the N4S methodology across these modules, the fundamental thesis of the source materials becomes undeniable.
The most devastating schedule destroying and capital depleting errors in luxury residential development do not occur when the foundation is being poured or the steel is being erected.
They occur months, sometimes years before construction even begins.
They are born in the unvalidated assumptions of the initial programming, in the miscalculated market alignment, in the undetected spatial conflicts, and in the incompatible chemistry of the execution team.
N4S is essentially a risk eradication engine. It replaces the vulnerability of human instinct and industry tradition with a fortress of interconnected structured data.
It forces the chaotic emotional process of building a custom estate into a rigorous mathematical discipline.
Which leaves us with a profound theoretical question generated by this deep dive.
If we deploy an algorithmic system that can accurately quantify a concept as abstract and subjective as personal aesthetic taste,
If it can mathematically map the operational chemistry of a team before the individuals ever meet.
and if it can perfectly balance an intimate, private architectural dream against the cold reality of market capitalization data.
Does this hyper-rational data-driven methodology strip the art, the soul and the serendipity out of custom home building?
Or does it, in fact, liberate the architects and designers?
Does it allow them to push the boundaries of creative execution even further, secure in the knowledge that the foundational risks, the budget blowouts, and the spatial failures have been entirely neutralized by the algorithm?
That is exactly the paradigm-shifting concept we want you to consider. The architecture of how we build is evolving just as rapidly as the buildings themselves.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the N4S platform. Keep questioning the unseen systems shaping the world around you, and we will see you next time.